Yo, 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 you made it. It's your favorite comic on the rise, Meldon Williams, and you are officially tuned into the Comedy Chatter Podcast. If you were searching for a pod that talks all things comedy as well as kick it with today's nationally headlining comedians, then this is the podcast for you. Boom. Thanks for tuning in. Comedy Chatter Podcast, Meldon Williams. I am here. Glad you are too. I want to thank y'all for tuning in, man. Hey, I don't take none of this for granted. So happy to finally get this thing up and running and off the ground, man. Mad shouts out to certain people for allowing me and helping me out to get this thing. I told you it's just, been a goal of mine for a while now to try to get my podcast started. For all the up-and-coming comics, man, I want the up-and-coming comics to be able to, identify with a comedian like myself, and then a podcast that's, out there. I know there's a whole lot of comedy podcasts out there right now. We got, everybody just from the guy that I'm interviewing today, Mr. Dean Edwards, got a podcast. Bark Marin. We got a whole lot of, cats out there that's been doing it. I'm an up-and-coming dude, man. You never heard of me, So with that said, you're able to get, a brief kind of, insight into from a guy that's, trying to make it, trying to do his thing, man. So that's why I'm happy that I'm able to do this podcast, and the people that's, tuning in, you'll get that kind of insight. Like I said, shouts out, man. First of all, Mr. Roger Feeney. He's the club manager at the Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase. That's the place where I got my start some 9 years ago. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth later. But, yeah, he's the person that, first put me on stage, and he's been rocking with me ever since. Every time I go in the club, man, I go shake his hand. How you doing, Roger? Thanks for everything, man. Thanks for getting me out here, man. This is something that I wanted to do. And if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't, been 9 years in the game right now. So mad shouts out to him. He allows me to interview the comedians at the Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase. I keep it real organic. I take them back in the green room. I lock the door, and I don't let them out until they give me at least 15 or 20. You know what I'm saying? That's not true. But yeah, these are comedians that come, in and do the weekends, and they allow me. Usually I hit them up beforehand, but they allowed me to give to get a quick interview and for my podcast, and so that's huge. Thanks to them, thanks to Roger, and also a special shout out to my dude that helps me put this thing all the way together. I mean, he's my straight up sound guy. His name is David Pittman. He's doing his thing in Ann Arbor and Detroit area in terms of technology and radio and TV and putting things together. He was the only dude that believed in my vision. I told him, hey, I want to start a podcast. I'm a local comedian, and I want to kind of try to put a podcast together where I'm interviewing nationally touring comedians that's coming through, and I'm also giving insight on up and coming comedians and the trials and tribulations and the stress and strife and the triumphs that we go through. He's like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. You know what I'm saying? Well, let me know what you need. And ever since then, he's been rocking with me, man. He's been in there recording. He helps me edit. So he helps me, bring this thing to the forefront. So I appreciate him wholeheartedly, man. Roger Feeney, Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase, David Pittman, technology guy. So let's see. First things first. My sponsors, Blockbuster Video. Yeah, thank you so much to Blockbuster. We all know Blockbuster's closed down now, but hey, they can't sue me because they no longer exist. So I first stepped on stage, like I said, Roger Feeney, Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase, gave me a shot. I was back home for Christmas, and a friend of mine and I was, I told myself, hey, man, I've been writing some stuff, and I was like, man, I'm trying to get on stage. So we go check out the comedy club, man. I walk in, and I find, like, hey, man, who do I talk to in order to try to get on tonight? They pointed me in, Roger's direction. I talked to Roger, said, hey, man, my name is Meldon Williams, and I'm a new, I want to try out stand-up comedy. Like, he's like, oh, well, yeah, man, you're just walking in. We usually have a process. You got to sign up, and then you got to call in on the next day, and then we got to pull your name out of a hat, and then if you make it, we'll call you the next. Then he said all this, and I just immediately was, oh, okay. I was just done. But right before I walked away, he's like, hey, but you know what? Yeah, we'll see if we can get you up tonight. And I was like, oh, all right, whatever. So I go back to, the table with my boy. I was like, yeah, man, it's a wrap. I ain't going up tonight. Like, he just gave me this laundry list of stuff that I'm supposed to do and that you got to do in order to get on. So one by one, we see these comedians come up and just die. I'm talking about just die an awful death. 8 comedians in. I'm still sitting over there. I'm sipping on my little Pepsi or whatever. And the guy that's been hosting the whole time, he comes over to my table. He said, hey, man, which one of you guys, wanted to go up?
I'm getting older now, man. Saying people treat me all different.
I remember when I was younger, you know what I'm saying? They had one question. Remember the big question when you were young? Hey, man, what you getting into tonight? Remember that? That was like the question. What's up for tonight? What you getting into? Well, I'm like, me different shit. You see me now. It ain't Mel. You take your medicine today? Bitch, you gonna say that in front of everybody? Like, you gonna tell them I'm a man right now? So my friend looks at me and I'm kind of looking like, so now I went from like talking about everybody, you know what I'm saying, to like straight up like nervous, like butterflies in my stomach, nervous. Now I'm like, oh shit, like real? So at this point, it was me either sink or swim. It was me either step up and say, yeah, it was me, or like, nah, I'm good, And I couldn't do this. My friend would have talked about me forever if I, had talked all that shit. And then now all of a sudden they telling me I can go on. So I was like, yeah, it was me. He was like, hey, you're up next. Hey, hey, I'll never forget those words. I'll never forget that time. Like I'll never forget when that happened, man. But like I said, I had a decision to make right now. Hey, are you, you up next? So either you gonna go through with this, or this whole time you just been talking shit. So I can remember just kind of, getting up there, you know what I'm saying? Didn't take no water with me or nothing. I just got up there, man, and I told my first two jokes, and literally, like, you get, like, giggles, like 2 or 3 giggles from just some really nice people. You know what I mean? Like, like they were only giggling because they didn't want, like, it to be no sound in the place. You know what I mean? Like, if there'd have been crickets in there, like, the crickets had to rub their damn legs together right then, like, that would have been the loudest shit you heard in there after both jokes. I was like, damn. So here we are. I'm faced with another decision. You know what I mean? And this is, now, like I said, I'm 9 years in the game. You kind of know these things now. That still happens to this day. Like you still tell jokes no matter how long you've been doing comedy. You still gonna tell some jokes that don't work, but it's all how you handle them. So at this particular time, 2 jokes just bombed. Hey, I can either keep going and just, going along with my set like I had it planned and, word for word, verbatim. Or I could just say, you know what, the hell with this, man. Just stop trying to be a comedian and be yourself. And that's what I decided to do. Kicking it with my man, Dean Edwards, man. We had the Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase, just got done doing our thing. So check this out. Kobe, LeBron, or Jordan.
Hilarious.
Hey, Kobe, LeBron. That way I know what kind of dude I'm going to write.
Nothing fair about that. Kobe, LeBron, or Jordan.
Which one we taking? I'm a GM. Which one?
Well, if I'm a GM, who am I taking? Is just on. I mean, Jordan wins just on purely. Jordan was a revolution. Exactly. Jordan was a revolution. Exactly. I'm a Lakers fan. I don't like doing those greatest of and best of because Bill Cosby and Richard Pryor came up in a different era and made it possible for Chris Rock and myself and Dave Chappelle and Kat and Kevin, like and Kev's my boy, came up together. What Kev is doing, what Russell Peters is doing as far as selling out arenas, sports arenas, is incredible. Eddie Murphy didn't necessarily he didn't tour like that. I heard he did do the Garden. So, and in Eddie's pinnacle, he could have gone and sold out football stadiums. You know what I mean? He didn't do it, but instead of doing that, he did Beverly Hills Cop, which back then made a couple $100 million, which now, if you adjusted the numbers, would probably be like $500-600 million. You know what I mean? Exactly. So everything has its time.
Years in the game. You mentioned 24.
I started February 21st, 1992.
All right. And I didn't know that you started with Kevin Hart.
Well, I started before Kev, but Kev started coming to New York around, like we started seeing Kev around 99, I want to say like right around 98, 99. You go to Philly and do the Laugh House and little Kev the Bastard, full of energy, high energy, and he's just real good dude, and he's been telling people this story recently. He auditioned for SNL at the same time I did. Matter of fact, I didn't tell people that I was auditioning because I didn't want comics like, yo, so what's going on? I didn't tell. The only person who knew was my mother, my wife, with Future Wife and my friend Ian Edwards, very funny comedian. Ian Edwards, good dude. Out of New York, but lives in LA now. By way of England and Jamaica, actually. And Ian, so in the meantime, Kev calls me. He's like, "Yo, Dean, I'm auditioning for Saturday Night Live. I need help to work on these characters." That's my man. So I was like, "All right, well, I'm gonna help him." And I think eventually I had to tell him because it just felt wrong, So I told him, and then we both auditioned same day. I didn't know you didn't get to watch other people, so I did mine, and then I was the last person that day. Like because I always feel like because we said no and because we had all this other stuff going on, they were like, well, we really going to put pressure on you, so you going last. So
wanted to mess with you.
Yeah, but I was in the Army, so I was like, you know what, I done survived 110 degree weather with a 70-pound rucksack on my back, in Columbia, South Carolina, so I can deal with Studio 8H,
Exactly.
and besides, Eddie Murphy said, hey man, when I auditioned, I just had fun. So I just kept saying that to myself, just enjoy yourself, and
Cool.
The rest, went in, had a great. I felt great. It was people said, and you might not hear laughs. I heard laughs, and left, and then I got the call. That was Thursday, so the following Monday. My agent called, said Lauren wants to meet you on Wednesday. He knows you're going to Montreal, so he's buying you a new ticket. Once I heard that, I was like, okay, so he just was size me up. And so we met, and I went up to Montreal with SNL. I couldn't tell Kev. D-Ray was up there with us, and I just had to, because they were like, you can't go up there with something already, otherwise you're taking an unnecessary slot, new faces. So we had to wait until after New Faces, and then I remember Dave Becky went and he told, because Kev's his client, he said he saw me about to go in and tell him, because my agent said it's okay for me to say, and he said, will you mind me talking to my client first? I was like, and I've said this many a time, I always respect Becky for saying, here, let me talk to my clients to protect his emotions, because he's still my friend, but he's his client, and I get it. And after Becky left the room, I went in. Kev had a big smile on his face, and that's my man. The same way I'm happy for him, he was happy for me, and that's pretty much how the relationship has always been.
Internet comedians. What about that? Let's go there, man. The internet, social media, YouTube, all of this stuff, man. And first of all, is there such thing? Internet comedians. I just gave that term, internet comedians. Is there such thing as internet comedians? Or are they just comedians? I mean, they're all the same. I recently went to a show in Atlanta, the Bronner Brothers. Hair show, to be exactly. The Bronner Brothers. Everybody knows about them. Chris Rock's movie Good Hair. Kind of did a feature on them. I know all the black women. All the black women know about the Bronner Brothers. But anyway, they had a comedy show. It was their 70th anniversary, and they had a comedy show, and their comedy show featured a guy that they call what they call an internet sensation. Like he's I'm not gonna use names, but internet sensation, and he was on the flyer, and everybody knows him, and this, that, and the other. Huge following on the internet in terms of the things that he does, and his YouTube and Vine and all those, appear on Facebook, all that stuff. Huge following. And then they had, an established comedian, like a comedy vet, a guy that's been, doing his thing for a while. He's been in movies. He's been, like I said, eating up the comedy clubs, man. Usually a headliner. Like every time I've seen him, he's been a headliner. And the funniest thing happened was the host comes out and he does his little thing and he gets the crowd hype, and I'm sitting there ready because I love comedy shows. Like I'm still a huge fan, even though I'm a comedian. I'm a huge fan of comedy. So hey, if you tell me it's a comedy show going on, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to see that. And there's some people I enjoy too. I'm going to check that out. So I wanted to check this out, knowing I was going to enjoy the show because of the hit, who I thought the headliner was going to be. And a funny thing happened, man. The host was like, okay, give it up, for the, first comedian coming to the stage tonight. And he introduced like the who I thought was going to be the headliner. So this guy came out and of course ripped it. You know what I'm saying? He did his thing. I laughed all the way through. He did about 20-25 minutes. Hilarious stuff. Host comes back out. He's all right, man, y'all ready for y'all headliner? And then he introduced the internet sensation guy, the guy that they put on there as the internet sensation. And I was like, wow. And this guy comes out, and, he didn't do bad. Like I said, the folks there know him. They were laughing and that and the other. But, in terms of a comedian, so we look at shit differently. Like, we're not just like, we're not just I'm a fan, but I'm not just a fan in awe of what you're doing because I do it. See what I'm saying? I've been doing it for 9 years. So, with that said, I write my own material. You know what I'm saying? I put up, I know, joke set up punchline. I know what a closer looks like. I know all these things. So also, like the terms that I'm throwing out to you now, like headliner, feature, like I know all of this. So this guy's, set clearly wasn't better than the feature. Tonight, this night's feature. He, a lot of animation, a lot of physical comedy, a lot of, running around, a lot of faces, some of this, a lot of stuff that he does on the skits and the sketches that he does. But in terms of just a straight up, like comedy set, he did about 20-25 minutes as well. But I just was a little, like this is what made me, talk about this today. I was a little bothered by the fact that, he, was considered the headliner, and the other guy who's been headlining clubs for a while was the feature to this dude. Now, before people, chime in, hey, man, you don't hate the player, hate the game. You know what I'm saying? A little cliche shit like that. Like, I don't need to hear it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can say it, but I don't need to hear it because the only play, I'm not hating what he's doing. You know what I'm saying? The internet dude. But it just begs the question from me, from a comedian, is, are there such things as internet comics, or should they just be called comics? There's a whole lot of guys out there nowadays that's just, got really huge followings. And I'm wondering if they're like taking over, if they're going to be the new guys that just because they got 2 million YouTube and 2 million, Instagram followers, should they now be the people that headline? Or should it be, the actual established people that's been in the game 10, 15 years, that's been eating up comedy clubs, like people that are considered comedy veterans, you know what I mean? People that's been in the game for a long time. That is, that's kind of where I'm going. I personally, you probably already know how I feel. Like when you do a show, and I've also produced and promoted shows as well. When I do a show, I want the strongest guy. I want the strongest person, meaning the strongest set. Like the strongest, when I mean say strong, I mean like, all the way through, And not just somebody that's got one bit, or not just somebody that's got a whole bunch of, like followers, and so everybody, brought them to fill up the seats. See, that's what I'm starting to think. Like those people can fill up the seats. Oh my God, they got 2 million, followers on, YouTube. So they thinking out of them 2 million followers that like these 5-minute sketches, that at least, 6,000 of them are gonna show up to this show. And from what I've been hearing, that's what's been happening. But once they get there, this guy's got to perform now for 20-25 minutes. He's not just about to do a 5-minute skit. He don't have no help. See, that stand-up comedy is a different animal. Stand-up comedy is not, like, hey, I don't have skit. It's not a skit. You know what I mean? Like, you got to paint the picture all by yourself. You got a microphone, a mic stand, and a spotlight. That's all you got. You know what I'm saying? You up on a stage. So this is way different from those skits and all that stuff that these guys are performing. So they got to learn how to, in my opinion, I'm going to put the veteran that's been doing stand-up for 10 years on before I put, the internet sensation. That's what they had him, billed as, you know what I mean? Not, hey, comedian, blah, 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 but, hey, the internet sensation, blah, blah, blah. And they paying him the same way they paying, if not more, the vet. So Tell me a little bit about Saturday Night Live. That's like an aspiration of a whole lot of comics. That's like, hey man, I'm trying to do Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Did you audition? Now, how did that come about?
It's been told numerous times, and y'all can check out the Father Mucking Protocol, my podcast on allthingscomedy.com. That's to make a long story not as long. I auditioned for a sketch show. I was flown out. They flew me out to L.A. for a sketch show on UPN back in the days, around like 99, 2000. I was horrible. Got back to New York, licked my wounds, took some classes with a Second City S-type show class, teaching some improv. Because I didn't want an opportunity. You know, they say success is when preparation meets opportunity. I said, you know what, I blew my previous opportunity, so I want to make sure I'm better prepared. Because I'm not from sketch, I'm from stand-up, you know, and there are different facets of comedy that people sometimes forget, you know, and I see a lot of new comics who will get in, not a lot of new stand-ups will get into beef about, man, these dudes, these social media, he ain't a comedian, he's on Vine, and I'm like, well, Lucille Ball, I Love Lucy wasn't a stand-up, but you can't sit there and say she wasn't a comedian. Lucy, I Love Lucy is classic, one of the best to ever do it, you know, male or female, she's brilliant, you know, and so you know, I licked my wounds, took this class, and then Mad TV had auditions, and with most sketch shows they'll ask you for 3 impressions and 3 characters. So instead, I said, you know what, if I do more impressions are my strong suit. I said, you know what, as long as I do everything within 3 minutes, I should be good. So I did 3 characters, and then I said, you know what, and then also instead of setting up my impressions where here's Denzel Washington at the grocery store, and then turning around and going into character. That's all a waste of time. So I while I was at home, I wrote a scene, wrote a little sketch, and I said, you know what, here's my impression of Chris Rock and Chris Tucker hosting a Black Award show where Jay-Z is doing a duet with Erykah Badu, and Denzel Washington and Sam Jackson presenting James Earl Jones with a Lifetime Achievement Award. So I say all that, and then boom, now I can just go from Chris Rock to Chris Tucker, man, and Denzel can talk, and then suddenly Sam Jackson, you know, and bounce back, and now I'm James Earl Jones, you know, just bounce from him, because that also, you know, you gotta play smart, and that's what bombing on that UPN sketch show did. It helped me. It helped the you know, there are no failures. They're just roads towards your succeeding. And if you can look at them as that and not get caught up in your feelings, which I did. I just, you know, gotta have some self-assessment. A lot of guys don't have self-assessment, and so I was like, all right, you know what, I gotta see what I did wrong and add that to what I did right and enhance it. So I left the Mad TV audition, and they called me back before I made it around the corner. Wow. That night I had a stand-up showcase with my management. I had the call back from Mad TV the next day, so I'm geeked and in a good mood because I got called back. So that showcase I killed. Next day I go in for the Mad TV call back in front of David Salzman and the producers. I had another good showing. 2 weeks later, I'm shooting a commercial, and my agent calls and says, I have good news, better news. Good news is Mad TV, they don't even want to screen test you, because normally after you audition, you'll go screen test for the network, and it's just a process. But they were like, listen, we're offering you 6 episodes that'll roll to 13 if we like you, and that'll roll to, and I was like, bet, because my wife was pregnant at the time, so I was like, perfect. And then I said, well, if that's I said, you said good news, better news. What's that? He's like, that's the good news. He's like, yeah, well, the better news is that show you did that night, that stand-up showcase, people from SNL were in the audience. And so then that allowed them to sort of play both to the middle. And I said no to SNL initially just because SNL has a track record for making comics sort of, or performers I should say, wait a long time. I think Will Ferrell had to audition like 4 or 5 times, and it's a pressure cooker. And Lorne Michaels, you know, he had it set up that way for a reason, to see how people rise to the occasion under pressure. And because, you know, we said no initially, it sort of forced their hand where they they said we'll give them an answer in a week's time.
So glad that, like I said, man, I'm getting a chance to do this stand-up, this Comedy Chatter podcast and do this stand-up comedy thing. I got so much in store for you guys. I want y'all to continue to tune in, continue to tell a friend. I know it's a lot of up-and-coming comics out there. It's a lot of guys that's probably been doing this 2 months, 3 months. Hey, y'all the ones I'm really looking for. Y'all the ones that I really want to start messing with the Comedy Chatter podcast. You know what I'm saying? Tell those guys. Very special thanks to my guest, Dean Edwards. Y'all can check him out on his own comedy podcast, The Further Mucking Protocol, where podcasts are found. Catch up with me on the next episode of the Comedy Chatter podcast with another nationally touring comic, and of course, me, Meldon Williams. Y'all be good to yourselves and be good to each other. Take care.